Welcome to Philosophers' Theory of Client Acquisition. Now, today, in this video, I'm going to introduce you to the fundamentals of successful client acquisition systems. And when I say fundamentals and when I use words like theory, a lot of people roll their eyes and get bored and they just assume it's nothing. And a lot of people just say, oh no, Dylan, I just want the exact TikTok marketing strategy that you use, or I just want the exact outreach script that you use and I'll be fine. But the truth is that if you already have the theory and the fundamentals that you need to build a client acquisition system, then you wouldn't have bought this program. And that's the cold hard truth. And I don't want to offend anyone with that, but a marketing strategy and scripts don't save you. They don't fix your business problems. An Instagram Reel strategy is not going to change your life. But what changes your life is a deep understanding of individual disciplines and fundamentals and applying those fundamentals to your business and your acquisition systems to achieve success. And so there's a saying that you should all be familiar with. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And I'm far more interested in making sure you can feed yourself forever. So if I give you a piece of copy or a script or something along those lines, there's a chance that in 6 months, it's not going to work anymore. Now, we keep our program up to date, so you won't need to worry about that. And you won't have that problem, but I don't want you to rely on anyone but yourself for the growth and success of your business. Acquisition is the most important thing to the growth of a company besides the product. And so if you're not the one solely responsible for it, the fact that you know how to fix these systems and build them yourself, then you will go hungry, right? So again, if you're not responsible for the fact that you know how to build and fix these systems yourself, then you're going to go hungry, right? Now, I'm not saying that you have to do everything yourself. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that you have to understand this so well to the point where you could if you had to. Because for as long as you don't know how this stuff works and you don't know how to build your own acquisition systems, business will always feel like a struggle for you. And so today I'm going to explain my entire paradigm for client acquisition and how I see it. Now, a paradigm is just a lens. It's just how it's a lens. It's how you see something. And it's the most important thing that you have ever. So it's taken me about 5 years to develop my paradigms and 5 years of learning and hunting and rejecting some ideas and bringing in other ideas and reading God knows how many books at this point and spending literally hundreds of thousands of dollars on mentorships, programs, courses, information, consulting, like no joke. And so you get to learn everything I know about this on a fundamental core principle level over the course of this program. And so it's an asymmetric activity. So do not disregard these videos because they're theory-based or fundamental-based. If you do that, you will fucking struggle. Now, I'm not going to say that, I'm going to say, right, if you're not getting results in the program, one of the first questions we're going to ask you is, when did you last watch this sort of like foundation module? Or have you watched the foundation module, right? And so if you don't watch these videos and then you come to us for help, the first thing we're going to do is tell you to watch them. And if you haven't watched them in like 4 months and you're having problems, we'll literally just tell you to come back and watch these again. Because every problem that you face can literally be solved with a good understanding of fundamentals. Literally everything, in my opinion. So it's important that you watch them and it's important that you pay attention. And most importantly, you go through them in a linear fashion, because I've designed like this entire like program in this next few videos to be linear, to be step by step, so you can't cut corners because you need everything to understand it. You can't just take 1 or 2 videos and just, run with it and just go run for the hills. Like, you need the whole thing. And so to fix the problem of client acquisition, to fix the problem of your business, we need to fix you, right? It's not just a shiny object that you need. It's not just a one-fix solution. It's not just a TikTok strategy. Like, you don't have business problems. You are the problem. And so we need to fix you by giving you this theory and fundamentals, right? And so the more you think that you don't need the theory, the more you need it. And after all, if you knew the fundamentals, you'd have already built your own client acquisition system, right? So again, we're going to explain the first principles of client acquisition and the key fundamentals that will help you build a successful acquisition system. Now, the first principles, we've got humans, stimuli, or stimulus, and action. Now, we've got the square, which represents the human. We've got the triangle, which represents the stimulus. And then we've got the circle, which represents action. Now, the human is a person that we want to attract as a client, right? The human, the stranger, wherever you want to call it. Then we've got the stimulus, which is what we use to actually get the action, right? So this is getting someone to do something. And then we've got the actual action itself. So that is a human acting in a way that supports them becoming a client, right? So with this diagram, these are really the three things that we can boil client acquisition down to at its very core that can't really be disputed. And you will need all three of these things in order for your client acquisition systems to actually work and take place. And so we take a human or stranger, right? We expose them to a certain type of stimulus, and then they take an action to become a client. And so this works on a macro and micro level. So, you know, a human plus all of our stimulus equals a client. Or if we look at like a funnel, for example, it could be a human plus a DM opener and an optimized profile equals an open DM, right? So here's some examples here that's going to further explain that point. So example of stimulus and actions, right? So DM opener is the stimuli, and then the action is getting someone to actually open the DM. So we've got DM opener, get someone to open the DM. An optimized profile could get someone to read the DM. The case studies get someone to think it works. The emotional sales question gets someone to share information that helps us close them. And then the Calendly event gets someone to book a call, right? And so like that's pretty much like all client acquisition like kind of is, right? It's just the stimuli and action that you get a human to take, right? So you get a human plus the stimuli, which equals the action, right? So to build successful client acquisition systems, you need to break down your entire acquisition process into micro action chain that, if taken together, leads to a client closing. So use my micro action chain for YouTube organic attraction, for example, right? So you click a video, then you watch the video, then you read the description, then you click the link in the description, then you watch, and then you go to watching another video on the funnel, then you believe the social proof I'm showing you, then you click the button to schedule, then you select the time, then you provide qualifying information, then you watch the interviews, then you show up for the call, then you agree to the agenda, then you answer the questions, then you listen to the pitch, then you start asking questions, then you start raising objections, then you start listening to the rebuttals, then you're being convinced. Then you are making a decision, clicking to pay, clicking the link to pay, filling out the card information, and then finally pressing the button to pay. So with this knowledge, you can craft a chain of stimuli that, if exposed to the right human, will trigger the actions to create a client. So let's talk about how we actually create this right stimuli, right? So stimuli versus fundamentals, right? And we're going to talk about strategy as well. It's kind of like stimuli, strategy, and fundamentals, but we're going to talk about stimuli and fundamentals first, and then I'm going to bring strategy into it, right? Because these are the three things, right? And strategy is different from stimuli, but we're going to talk about stimuli and versus fundamentals first. So when it comes to client attraction, there are stimuli and there are fundamentals. Stimuli are the building blocks of attraction systems, for example, cold outreach copy and evergreen videos. Fundamentals are the things that you build the stimuli on, for example, ideas and principles. Other things that stimuli include are landing pages, follow-up messages, Loom videos, cold call scripts, sales scripts, and ad creatives. Other things that are fundamentals include models, and I don't mean OnlyFans models, truths, heuristics, foundations, values, theories, assumptions, philosophies, and concepts, right? And so stimuli that work, so stimuli that actually get results, are built on good fundamentals. Stimuli that don't work are built on bad fundamentals or no fundamentals at all. The more sound the fundamentals a stimulus is built on, the better the results will be. Fundamentals explain why you build, design, and structure stimuli in certain ways. So the example of a fundamental would be simplicity, right? I always talk about how simplicity scales because it's one of the key fundamentals. Now, simple words, text, and language makes a message, offer, or idea easy to understand. What is easier to understand is easier to comprehend, believe, and act on. How this applies to building stimuli, because simplicity improves results, and we aim to keep stimuli such as DM copy simple. So this is why when you see, those beginner agencies that don't understand any of this stuff just send in these massive fucking outreach messages thinking it's going to work and then wondering why it doesn't. It's because they don't understand one of the core fundamentals, which is simplicity, right? And so that's why they're never going to get results. And so they don't know where they're going wrong, and they just think they need some new shiny object that's going to work, or they need to say the specific right scientific wording and it'll get them to react. But that's not really how it works, right? So some examples of stimuli is one of my YouTube videos. I helped an OnlyFans model go from 0 to 180K per month. We literally got like 4 clients from this video, and I only had like 1,600 views. And so this is an example of a stimuli getting someone to act, right? Same with this video, this is like a social proof stimuli, and same with this is an ad creative, right? So next we got strategies, right? So Stimuli, strategies, and fundamentals, right? Now, these are the key things, right? Now, a strategy is different from a stimuli. A strategy is when you take all of your stimuli and all of your variables and all of your SOPs and spreadsheets and everything you need to build a system, and you combine it into one specific thing. So your DM opener or your ad copy or your funnel are not standalone strategies. Those are stimuli. Strategies manifest when you combine multiple variables to all work in a certain way to achieve an outcome that you're actually trying to accomplish. So a stimuli is the trigger that gets someone to take an action of becoming a client, and that action could be anything from clicking a video or clicking a link to pay. Whereas a strategy is when you combine all of your stimuli together and everything that constitutes the system, all of your metric tracking spreadsheets, all of your CRMs, all of your leads, and you put them into a coherent mechanism to produce clients. Strategies are not systems. A system is a reliable sort of way of looking at a strategy in input and output format, but a strategy itself is the way you combine everything together. It's kind of synonymous with systems, but slightly different. And then the fundamentals are the things that we build up from. So if you want to have a really good stimulus or a really good strategy, then you need good fundamentals to draw from in order to do that. So fundamentals are the most important thing to do with client acquisition, because when you have good fundamentals, you can build good stimuli and you can build good strategies. So you can take away all of my stimuli and all of my strategies from me and wipe my memory of everything I know how to do with client acquisition. But if you left me with just my fundamentals, I could literally rebuild everything within a month. And so these are really fucking key, right? And so strategies are ways of constructing systems and arranging variables to get results, right? And things that our strategies include are methods, initiatives, ways of doing it, process, mode of execution, plan, procedure, blueprint, tactics, etc. So stimuli and strategies that work, that get results, are built on good fundamentals. Stimuli and strategies that don't work are built on bad fundamentals or no fundamentals at all. The more sound the fundamentals a stimulus or strategy is built on, the better the results. Fundamentals explain why you build, design, and structure stimuli in a certain way, right? So the key word here is soundness, right? So soundness originates from the Stoic philosophy of reason, and it means in alignment with the objective truth. So what you really want is to be designing your stimuli and strategies in accordance with reality, and you want to understand reality and what it means and how it works, and you want to know how the world works to apply specifically to the disciplines that apply to client acquisition, like psychology. And when you can understand the truth of those things, you can apply that truth to building your stimuli and strategies, and then you're acting in accordance with the truth and how the world really works, and then you're kind of just unstoppable at that point, right? And so this is what it looks like. If you want to build a client acquisition system and you want it to work and you want it to be successful, then you need to have a strategy and you need to have a stimuli. So strategy plus stimuli equals a client acquisition system. But then in order to have a good strategy and good stimuli, you need to have good fundamentals underpinning it. And so this is how it works, right? It's like a pyramid. So if you have a good understanding of the fundamentals and you don't have a good understanding of how to design these things, then your client acquisition is or lack thereof, right, is going to fail. Right? Does that make sense? So if you don't have a good understanding of the fundamentals and you don't have a good understanding of how to design these things, then your client acquisition system is going to, or again, lack thereof, is going to fail. So if you're not acquiring clients and you're really struggling to get clients, then it's probably because you don't have the right strategy or stimuli. Right? And the reason you don't have those is because you don't have the right fundamentals. And even if you do have the right strategy and the right stimuli, but you don't have the right fundamentals, then these will eventually break. Does that make sense, right? So these will eventually break if you don't have the right fundamentals in place. And so that's really key to understand, because the right stimuli and not the right fundamentals is not going to work. Or the right strategy and stimuli and the right fundamentals is not going to work. It'll eventually break, right? And so you can't really cheat the system. You have to start at the bottom of the pyramid. So if I give you a good strategy or good stimuli, right, but not the fundamentals, then effectively you've just built a house of cards. Like, yeah, you might go and add an extra $8,000 a month or $6,000 a month, but eventually it's all going to come crumbling down. And so you need to understand the fundamentals, because without this, it doesn't work. And the amount of agencies I see being built on, being built like a house of cards or being built on sand or wherever analogy you want to use, like, that's just how it is. And they don't understand this core part because they miss it and it's boring and it really is fucking painful. they just want to jump to the new shiny strategy or using some DM opener that's going to be key, and they think that that's just going to hold their client acquisition system up, right? But again, it just doesn't work, or it works temporarily and it all comes crashing down, right? So stimulus and strategy hunters versus fundamental seekers, right? The biggest mistake people make when it comes to learning client attraction is looking for stimuli and strategies instead of fundamentals. People that want stimuli, strategies, are stimuli and strategy hunters. People that want fundamentals to build their own stimuli and strategies are fundamental seekers. Stimuli and strategy hunters are people who want the newest copy, the newest process, the latest script, or the hottest stimuli. They always want the easy copy and pastable shiny stimuli, aka shiny objects, that will immediately fix their business. They may find short-term success in the new shiny stimuli or strategy, but in the long term, they will suffer immeasurably in their business as they stimuli and strategy hop. Whereas fundamental seekers seek to find the fundamentals that the new and hot stimuli and strategies are built on. They want to go a layer deeper to find out why the shiny stimuli are working. They also actively look for fundamentals from other disciplines so they can apply these to their client acquisition systems. In short term, the fundamental seekers find this slow and painful, but in the long term, they find joy in creating their own winning stimuli. To win, you must become a fundamental seeker. This is so important, guys, and I really, really advise you to watch this module multiple times, because we're going to talk about some stuff at the end, and we're going to talk about like inversion, and we're going to talk about like a bunch of different things of like doing the opposite and this and that. And so like once you understand that and then you come back to this is going to click even more. Like I promise you, if you watch this like twice, 3 times, 4 times, that 3rd and 4th time, and as long as you're taking notes as well, so it's really sinking, it's just going to start to click, and it's going to be the best thing you ever did. Do not just watch this once. Like, please, I beg you, like if you really want to solve your problems, don't just watch this video once and think you've got it because you've watched it and you want to just, yes, I can move on to the next one. Like seriously, like live in this fucking module and like just really ingrain this stuff into your brain, right? So again, to win, you must become a fundamental seeker. So why does stimuli and strategy hunters fail and fundamental seekers win, right? It's because of something called stimuli entropy, right? Entropy states that all systems die. Like systems, all stimuli die, aka stop producing results, with time and repeated exposure. This is because of a principle in human nature and psychology that's called stimulus hypothesia. Stimulus equals the term for something we expose a human in our niche to get an action. Hypothesia equals the medical term for a loss/decrease in sensation, aka becoming numb. Now, stimulus hypothesia equals the term used to describe humans in our niche going numb to certain stimuli after repeated exposure. And so a stimuli stops working when stimuli hypothesia kicks in. Basically, it's when the person you're trying to get to act has already been exposed to the stimuli so many times that it no longer has an effect on them because they've become numb to it. So in marketing, this is also known as banner blindness or ad fatigue. For example, that cool style of ad copy eventually fatigues. That DM copy or that DM strategy stops getting replies. The sales script doesn't convert as well now. The subject line stops getting opens. And this is why, considering the present state of the collective online marketing psychology, I never suggest using the word OnlyFans management agency in your copy or doing outreach from an agency page that looks the same as every other agency page on Instagram, because it just doesn't work, right? Because these creators, these OnlyFans models, are used to being exposed to this type of stimuli, right? And so it's just the same as ad fatiguing. They just get overexposed, and so it no longer has an effect on them because they've become numb to it, right? They've hit the hypothesia stage, right? They've decreased. It's just another agency. It's just another agency. It's just another agency page outreaching me. Blah 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 blah, right? And so the human might not act because they acted on a similar stimulus before, which may be new, and had a painful experience, which is very common in the online business space. And so this is called classical conditioning, whereby a prospect purchases from a provider, has a negative experience, and then avoids purchasing from vendors that show a similar stimuli, right? And so there's people in my industry, for example, in the coaching business, where they sell OFM courses and programs. And I'm going to be completely honest, I'm not going to mention names, but a lot of them are dog shit. And I've bought all of them just to see what people are doing and see if there's any gems, because again, I'm always wanting to educate myself. But like, I'm yet to buy a good one. Like, if I'm being completely real, right? And so I can understand when people come to us and they very like sketched on purchasing another OFM program because they're facing what we're talking about here, right? They've had a painful experience with another OFM guru's program, and they're now conditioned and they've had a negative experience, and so now they're going to avoid purchasing my program because they just assume that mine's going to be the same stuff, right? And so that's why like people put gurus in a box, right? They're like, oh, you're just a guru, or oh, you just sell a course, right? And like, there's bad courses and there's good courses, but everyone likes to have this classic condition, and everyone likes to, because they've been exposed to so many gurus, they like to just categorize it, right? And it's the same with OnlyFans creators. If they've been burnt by an agency that's like, let's just say an agency from a specific looking agency page, you know what I'm talking about. Every agency page looks the same. It's like luxury cars that's all stock images and then models and blah, 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 right? And I kind of started that trend, and now it doesn't work anymore because like it was worked when I did it, but now it doesn't do it because I was trying to think of a way like, right, how can we do this without showing our models, because we didn't want to show our models, and it worked. But then everyone started copying, right? Because everyone does monkey see, monkey do. And so when everyone starts copying that, and then an agency copies my exact outreach message, an agency copies my exact Instagram page, and then they outreach a model, the model trusts them, signs to them, and then they deliver bad results, and now they've been burnt. Well, when the next agency comes along and says the exact same message or similar, or has a very similar page, well, guess what? The model's numb to it, the model's had a bad experience, there's no way she's gonna trust you, and so the stimuli doesn't work, and so she's not gonna act, right? And so basically, if you use the same stimuli as everyone else, stimulus hypothesia or classical conditioning will haunt you, right? Like, and people don't even realize this. Like, this might be clicking for you now because you're like, oh, that's why this wasn't working, or that's why Dylan says not to monkey see, monkey do. Yes, that is why I say it, right? Because this is the theory behind it. And so this is why stimulus hunters suffer a slow, painful death in business. They copy and paste the same thing that is working for everyone, enjoying the temporary success, but certain death. And I see this in my programs, especially in my old programs, when I didn't teach this theory-based stuff. There'd be two people that start at the same time, and you might have heard me use this example before, but there'd be two people that are exactly the same. They've got the same access to the same resources, they're the same in terms of financial capability, they're the same in terms of IQ and EQ, like they let's just say they're literally exactly the same person. They get exposed to the same stimuli, they get exposed to the same information that I give them, and one of them goes and copies and pastes and monkey see, monkey do's, whereas the other one wants to understand why I'm telling them this and wants to understand the fundamentals. Now, the person that is the fundamental seeker in this place might take 4 months before you start seeing any results. But the stimuli hunter is just going to instantly go through, shiny object through the program, copy paste everything. He's going to start to see results straight away. And that gives him good feedback. That's like a really, like, oh my God, I'm getting results straight away. This program's working. And now he's gone from 10 grand a month to 30 grand a month, and he's gassed, right? He's absolutely gassed. And this like fundamental seeker is still down here, and this guy's like, oh my God, I started like at the same time as this guy, and I'm way ahead of him, right? But the fundamental seeker is like, it's like the tortoise and the hare. All of a sudden, the fundamental seeker understands the fundamentals, he implements everything, he puts his own spin on it, and all of a sudden he starts catching up, right? Now this guy's at 30 grand a month, his system stops working because everyone's using the same thing. And like, he's wondering why his results are dropping off, and all of a sudden now he's doing 20 grand a month, and he was doing 30 grand last month. All of a sudden this fundamental seeker is coming past him, and guess what? He's now gone from 10 grand a month to 100 grand a month in 2 months, or at least that's what it looks like. And the stimuli hunter sat there wondering, how the fuck is this guy just overtaking me? And how is he doing 100 grand a month? How is he just like overnight, it seems, like jumped to 100 grand a month? He doesn't realize it wasn't overnight. He was looking at the fundamentals for 4 months, and then he implemented and iterated and found something that works and just went through the roof and went exponential, right? And that's why you see someone that can go from making 10 grand a month to 100 grand a month in a couple months, and other people just be stuck at like 10 grand a month, or then jump to 20 grand a month 1 month, then back to 10 grand a month, and then have 1 month where they jump to 30k and then they're at 20k, and it's super volatile. It's because they're always looking for the shiny objects. They're always looking for the stimuli. They're the stimuli and strategy hunters, right? And they will suffer a slow, painful death in business. And the issue is their ego gets in the way. And their ego is so big that they never realize it until they become those flash in the pan entrepreneurs that show off in Dubai for a bit when they're making 10, 20, 30 grand a month, and then all of a sudden you never hear of them again because they never learned anything that's actually true, and they just constantly just look for shiny objects, right? It's the same with people that are always looking for the easy one-step solutions with black hat marketing, and they think they think if they can find this one dating app strategy and pay all this money for it and implement it, it's going to fix all their problems for the rest of the time and they're going to be good. Guess what? No, you're not. You cannot fix a long-term problem with a temporary solution, right? You're just going to die a slow, painful death. And this is because the stimuli hunters, they copy and paste the same thing that is working for everyone, enjoying temporary success. Remember, who the fuck wants temporary success? Fuck that, right? They enjoy temporary success, but they also have certain death. For client attraction stimuli to be successful, it must be novel, unique, original, and creative. Either that, or a lot of time has to pass after the stimuli hypothesia / classical conditionings have had their effect. We're going to talk about this as well, right? We're going to talk about this in terms of like the time passing, and we're going to get into that, which is why I recommend you watch this multiple times, because I'm talking about this now, but if you understand what I mean by this, it's going to hit even harder, right? And so I need to explain it one at a time, and so it's going to make a lot of sense if you watch this video a few times. Now, stimulus hypothesia and classical conditioning pass with time and with decrease of exposure. So this is where we're going to talk about the cyclical stimulus effectiveness and contrarian attraction, right? So 95% of people who try to acquire clients are stimulus hunters. This means that 95% of people all do the same thing to acquire clients. And this will never change, and it's just human nature. So we can rely on it to build a strategy, right? And so this is why like you have such an advantage with this program, because I'm not trying to be egotistical, but no one fucking teaches you this shit. Like, no one teaches you this shit. Everyone just gives you the shiny object strategies because they want to sell you. And so, like, yeah, they might get their business to 100 grand a month faster than I can. But because I'm teaching you this stuff and because my product's so good, eventually I'm going to win in the long term. I don't give a fuck about the short term, right? And so, I don't want to sit there and like, I could literally sit there and be like another guru and be like, guys, just use this TikTok strategy. And then 3 months down the line, it stops working and all my clients start getting results. And then my refunds go through the roof, or I got to come up with a new shiny strategy to market. And again, that's not what I want to do, right? I want to teach you guys how to actually win in the long term, right? Which is why, like I said, 95% of people don't teach this, and 95% of people that even teach this don't understand it themselves. The majority of all gurus that sell courses, which is why they get such a bad rep, they don't even understand this stuff I'm talking about, right? And so this whole thing like just means that, like I said, 95% of people all do the same thing to acquire clients. So you have such an advantage by being in this program. And this is something that will never change. I can't change the human nature. I can't change the human condition, but I can change it for you, right? And I can have that little impact in our segment with you guys who are on this program. And so we can rely on this information to build a strategy. So the more stimulus is exposed to a group of humans, niche, the less effective it becomes. This graph helps us visualize stimulus hypothesia and classical conditioning, right? So what we can see here is the relationship between the effectiveness of a stimuli and the exposure to humans. So the least exposure, the more effectiveness. The more exposure, the least effectiveness, right? So the less effective a stimulus becomes, the less it is used by people who want to get clients. However, as the effectiveness decreases, the usage decreases. So you will find more people who are using stimulus you, right, than you will you. So nowadays, I don't receive like any messages from people asking me, if I use like dating apps or like Google ads, right? Because it just doesn't really work anymore. Because everyone's used it, and with an effectiveness, right? Like with an effectiveness of stimuli, the decrease also comes, right? So like a usage decrease happens when everyone is fucking trying to use dating apps and it stops working, right? And so like, usage decrease, and we know that effectiveness is directly related to exposure, right? So effectiveness of stimuli is directly related to the exposure of humans. And so the more people that use dating apps, the less effective it gets. Now, there's variables as to why that can happen. Well, firstly, like competition. Secondly, because platforms are going to get savvy to it. Like, there's so many people using this platform the way it's not meant to be used, because it's aka black hat marketing. And so, like, eventually, over time, the usage goes down, and it just stops, like, because people don't use it, right? Which is why, like, back in the day, like 2 years ago, everyone used to message me about dating apps. But now everyone knows they kind of shit and they don't work, and so no one really messages me about it. And it's because the effect of the stimuli has gone down with the usage of it, right? And so stimuli meet temporary demise after overexposure. So once this happens, everyone hops to the next shiny stimuli, and the same thing happens over and over again. And let's call this stimulus hopping. It's what stimulus hunters do. But then after time passes, the humans forget they got burned by a stimuli and it feels novel again. When this happens, the stimulus becomes effective again, right? So we find that after we get exposure, after the time elapses, the effectiveness increases again, right? However, as the strategy becomes more effective, more people start using it again, and the cycle begins to form, as you can see below. So this works. Like, how this works, right, is that most stimuli, most things that people latch on to work like this, right? They just do this. And so when nobody is using it, it's because it's been overexposed, right? So, like, for example, dating apps, where nobody's using this because it's been overexposed. And what happens is then it becomes really effective, because the more time that actually elapses after overexposure, the more effective it starts to become again. And then as it becomes more effective, more people start latching onto it and using it, and then we start to see the exponential decrease again, right? And it's because it's being exposed to more humans, and then we get to this point at the end, right? So we get to this point here, and then it just loops back and resets, and it just works like this, right? And maybe dating apps is a poor example, because like that is more black hat, so like eventually like that's just gonna get fucked. Like, that's not necessarily something that like repeats, but like a better example probably other than dating apps, because again, you're fighting against the platforms there, so that was probably a poor example for me to use, because I don't think that's ever gonna come back. But it could, because if everyone stops using it and then these platforms are like, oh, no one's using it anymore, and then they're like, oh, fuck it, we don't have to be as tough on security and spend as much, then they might like ease up, and then everyone will start using it again, then everyone will see it, and then it'll start to get effective, and then it'll decline again. But like maybe a better example would be like agency pages, right? Agency pages, if everyone's like, when I first started, agency pages were working really well, and this, like, believe it or not, right, when I started, if you said you were an agency, because there wasn't many, and there wasn't many on social media, models would be like, oh my God. It would be this like exclusive thing, and they would be like, oh my God, I want to sign to an agency. Because the word agency, like OnlyFans agency, actually meant something. Whereas now, because it's so overused, like, it just doesn't work, right? And so like it's been exposed so much to humans that it just doesn't work. And so like we're literally like at this point right now with this thing. But it will get to a point, maybe in 5 years, where everyone understands that our agency pages don't work, and so no one will have an agency page, no one will say they run an OnlyFans agency, and there'll be all these new things that people are doing and all these new shiny objects, and then guess what? The person that then jumps back to doing an agency page and having the traditional stuff will start to see the effect of that stimulus. Then everyone else will start to see it, and they'll start copying, and again, it will go up, and then all of a sudden it'll decline again, and it'll repeat, right? And this works with everything, right? This is like a core fundamental principle, right? And so like, you need to realize how it works, because like one of my favorite strategies for finding things that work is literally going back and looking at things that worked like 5 years ago, and then picking them up and being like, oh, nobody uses these anymore, which means that like classical conditioning and stimuli hypothesia have probably subsided. So that's wonderful for me, right? And so one of the best things you can do in client acquisition is doing the opposite of everyone else. So when you understand human nature and the fact that everyone else is just a stimuli hunter, you will learn to stay clear of readily available stimuli. So it's like, if I'm deciding where I should run and how I should run it, and it's like thousands of people have access to that thing, then I just won't do it. And if anything, I'll just do the polar opposite of that thing, right? And so again, this doesn't have a name. And so I'm calling this cyclical stimulus of effectiveness. But if you understand this graph, you can leverage something else called the contrarian attraction, right? And so the cyclical stimulus effectiveness, when the effect, it just means when the effectiveness of a stimulus goes up and down over time and with repeated exposure, right? It's literally just this, right? And the contrarian attraction is doing the opposite of where everyone else by leveraging cyclical stimulus effectiveness, right? So I'm always looking back at 5 years, and again, I'm not even just looking at like OnlyFans management industry. I'm looking at like traditional marketing agencies and like all these different things which we're going to get into. And I'm like for example, YouTube. I'm like, right, who was like really successful 5 years ago? What were they doing? Like, and then how can I apply that to what I'm doing now? Because no one's doing it anymore. So YouTube is a good example of this in content, right? Every single person, when Alex Hormozi started, right, there was like those ADHD Alex Hormozi edits, right? Now, then everyone, and it was really effective because it just grabbed your attention. It was super ADHD edits, captions, motion graphics. Everyone started using them. And as everyone started using them, right, and it was really good. And then all of a sudden, the more people that used them, it hit this like peak. And then because it got exposed to so many people and everyone was using them, it started to just decrease exponentially, right? To now we're at the point where we're literally down here with that. Like it doesn't work anymore that well, right? And so people have stopped going to the ADHD edits. And now everyone's back to like the old days of TikTok. Everyone's back to like raw filming videos on their phone, less editing, more basic, less ADHD. And that's what's being really effective, right? And so, but guess what? Eventually that's going to start to phase out again as more people start to use it. And then, like, it's just going to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat, right? And so, like, there's different things. So right now, the really effective strategy is just, like, more raw, organic content. And eventually, that's going to do this and go that. And it was the same when the ADHD edit comes back. And again, the ADHD edits will probably come back in a few years and they'll start working again. And so, like, I like to, and it was the same with YouTube when we had the beastification of YouTube, right? Where everyone had the same, like, everyone was using the Mr. Beast type thumbnails and the Mr. Beast type videos. And it worked really well, and now we're kind of up you and around, we're like around you somewhere, and eventually that'll start to taper off and die, and then it'll repeat again because everyone stops using it and everyone will go back to something else, and then it'll repeat again, boom, boom, boom. And so there's like these, it's just like, it repeats, and it's just like, I'm right now like looking at YouTube from like 5 years ago and like, right, who was doing really well on YouTube like 5 years ago? What were they doing? What were they format? What was their thumbnail style? What was their title style? And let me test the effectiveness of that stimuli because no one's doing it anymore. Because if like the Mr. Beast stuff worked really well because he was the first one to do it, and so no one had been exposed to that. No human had been exposed to that stimuli, and so it was super effective. But when everyone starts to see that works, everyone monkey sees, monkey does, and copies to where it starts to decline. And so like now, if everyone's doing the Mr. Beastification and it's up you, and I start doing something else, like if I go and look at like Alex Becker, because he was really successful 5 years ago, and I start copying what he was doing, or like not copying, but applying what he was doing to my YouTube, when everyone's feeds is covered with Mr. Beast type thumbnails and videos, and then I pop up, I'm going to be the opposite to everyone else, and so it's more intriguing, and so I have this contrarian attraction to where they're like, huh, what's this video about? People are conditioned to see in this Mr. Beast style. Let me go and see what this video is. And then they do it, right? Because I'm doing the opposite of everyone else by leveraging cyclical stimulus effectiveness. For example, the best example I can use of this, right, is like I look a lot at like traditional marketing agencies to see what they do and to see where I can apply to my agency, right? And as of me making this, a lot of e-commerce marketing agencies are turning to TikTok offers to change their stimuli, email copy, sales scripts, etc. as more traditional platforms like Facebook have been overexposed to the niche. So right now, TikTok offers are novel and e-commerce owners haven't been burned yet by TikTok agencies. But with time and repeated exposure, TikTok will be the worst stimulus. And if I was an e-commerce marketer right now, I'd be betting my money back on Facebook ads or a different platform in a year or two. And another example is school right now. School is super overpowered right now. Everyone's like using it. I'm getting like $1 cost per leads because it's this new thing that not many people have been exposed to, and it's like super trusted because the Hormozi's putting it. But when you just have loads of tons of shitty course gurus start to just hop on the bandwagon and start making shitty products, well, the effectiveness to school is not going to be as good anymore, because right now it's super trusted. So everyone's thinking, oh, if this is a program on school, it must be really good because Alex Hormozi's put his name to it and Sam Evans have put their name to it. So it must be really good because they wouldn't risk their brand reputation. And so it works really well. But over time, which I'm starting to see happen, all the gurus, like the traditional fake gurus, are going to start thinking, oh, school's this new hot thing because they don't understand fundamental principles. And they're going to switch because they got shiny object syndrome, and they're going to be like, I need to put a course on school. And then they make a really shitty course on school, they overprice it, and it burns a ton of people. And then all of a sudden everyone stops like going to school as much because they're like, I don't know if I trust this one. I bought a course on school before and it was quite shit. And then all of a sudden it stops to be effective, and then again this cycle repeats, and then over time everyone stops working on school, and maybe everyone starts going back to the traditional funnels and they start working, blah, 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 right? So that's like how that works, right? Now, fundamental seekers use fundamentals to think critically and build their own unique strategies and stimuli that are different or totally opposite to what 95% of other people, object hunters, are doing. This allows them to fight stimuli entropy laws like stimulus hypothesia and classical conditioning. By doing this, they breed consistency in the client attraction systems and find client acquisition easy. In summary, contrarian attraction makes client acquisition easy. You can still get results doing what everyone else is doing, just do it slightly differently. You don't need to be a genius and come up with totally groundbreaking strategy. You just need to take something that already works and make it your own using the fundamentals, not just applied, right? So always look for the fundamentals the strategy you've given is built on. So I'm going to give you a strategy called DM alchemy, right? Which is a strategy that works really well for me. If you go monkey see, monkey do and copy it, well, guess what? It's not going to work. It's just not going to work for you. But if you like look at the fundamental principles that strategy was built on, and that system was built on, and you then take what you know, and you take your paradigms and your strengths, and you apply it, and you make your own thing, you're probably going to get way more success, right? And so it's really important that you understand this for everything, right? Don't just copy and paste. Like, just because like, oh, you see like this one TikTok strategy working, like, and now you want to copy it, it doesn't mean that it's going to work for you, right? And so like you need to understand the fundamentals. And so like, again, you can still get results doing what everyone else is doing, just do it slightly differently, right? You don't need to be a genius and come up with totally groundbreaking strategy. You just need to take something that already works and make it your own using fundamentals that you've not yet applied. Always look for the fundamentals the strategy you've given is built on. Stimuli that have extreme longevity, are effective for a very long time, are used by very few people. Next, we've got multidisciplinary thinking. What are fundamentals, right? You're like, Dylan, you've been talking about this shit for ages. Like, what even are fundamentals? You've briefly touched on it, but like, what is it? Fundamentals are rules and principles that help us understand reality or certain parts of it, aka disciplines. For example, natural selection helps us understand evolution. Gravity helps us understand physics. Fundamentals are to an entrepreneur what tools are to a builder. For a builder, certain jobs require the usage of a hammer. For others, usage of a screwdriver. For an entrepreneur, certain strategies require usage of natural selection. For others, usage of Occam's razor, right? We can apply our understanding of fundamentals in one discipline to another. This is called multidisciplinary thinking, and it is extremely powerful. Natural selection can help me understand evolution, as well as copywriting or sales. A discipline is a field of study. Each discipline is built on principles and rules, and these are fundamentals we can extract and use in our client acquisition process. For example, economics, right? Fundamental, supply and demand. Opportunity cost, law of diminishing returns, and incentives. And so it's imperative that you understand that client acquisition is not a discipline, right? It technically doesn't exist. Client acquisition is an interlacement of a collection of other disciplines, right? And you cannot study or get good at client acquisition, right? You must study the disciplines that underpin it. So philosophy, psychology, statistics, economics, game theory, right? Once you understand all the disciplines that make up client acquisition in thorough depth, you can lace together the fundamentals from each one to craft your own unique strategy for client acquisition. Now, this personally took me about 5 years, and now I can immediately and accurately write winning email copy, produce winning ads, diagnose why a sales call didn't close, and optimize a landing page, all because I unconsciously understand these fundamentals. in client acquisition, there are two types of fundamentals. There's strategy-based and stimuli-based, right? So this is worldly and this is psychological. Strategy-based fundamentals, worldly, fundamentals of general disciplines in the world, for example, chemistry, physics, literature. These help build strategies to manage stimuli. Stimuli-based fundamentals are psychological. So fundamentals specifically of the discipline of psychology, and we're going to cover this in the next video, and these help build stimuli, right? And so learning and using strategy-based fundamentals. Learning fundamentals is quite straightforward. You can pick up the core fundamentals of most disciplines by simply reading entry-level college textbooks. For example, I wanted to understand the fundamentals of evolutionary psychology, direct response marketing, and UK accounting, so I bought these books, right? We've got Evolutionary Psychology by Dr. David Buss. We have got The Boring Letters by Gary Halbert, who's arguably the best direct response marketer in the world. And we have got Bookkeeping and Accounting all in one for dummies, right? Now, you don't need massive amounts of knowledge for each discipline, but you need just enough to grasp the simple fundamentals that underpin it. And the best strategy I've found is to find the founding father/mother of the discipline and study their ideas. The entire discipline is likely fleshed out around their ideas. For example, Adam Smith in economics, Watson and Crick in genetics, Darwin in evolution, Professor J. Forrester in systems thinking, Gary Halbert or Philip Kotler in marketing, Sigmund Freud or Carl Jung in psychology, and Epictetus in stoicism, right? Because the thing is, like, all these, like, marketers, me, like, everyone, right? Like Alex Hormozi, they've all learnt this stuff from, like, the founding fathers. So Alex Hormozi or Russell Brunson are all pretty much, like, they come from the direct response marketing world, right? So they study and understand Gary Halbert and Dan S. Kennedy, right? Those are kind of like the founding fathers of direct response marketing. And so, like, all of Hormozi's and Russell Brunson's stuff is like almost diluted version of what they've learned from the source, but with their own ideas from their own experience attached to it, which is what makes their ideas also valuable, right? But it's all, like, the fundamentals of what they talk about is all from, for example, Dan S. Kennedy and Gary Halbert, right? If they're talking about marketing. And it's the same with, like, psychology and Sigmund Freud and stoicism with Epictetus, right? Like, all these, like, stoicism gurus that were, like, Hamza, for example, like, it's, all the stuff he talks about is from people like Epictetus, right? Or Marcus Aurelius, right? And so once you've learned the fundamentals, explore how you can apply it to other disciplines. And when building your strategies for client acquisition, call on these fundamentals. For example, in chemistry, there's this fundamental called alloying, right? Which means combining two metals to make a stronger, more durable one. So if you was to apply alloying to client acquisition, it would be combining two email copy styles to make a stronger one, or combining two ad copy styles to make a stronger one, right? And then there's another term in biology called osmosis. And what osmosis is the movement of water across the cell membrane from an area of high water concentration to low water concentration. And so you can apply osmosis to your niche, right? So the movement of OnlyFans agencies from an area of high agency niche concentration to low agency niche concentration, right? So again, like, if you could apply these principles to figure out, like, where you want to go. So, like, if the area of high niche concentration is like everyone just has chatting agencies and no one does full service management agencies, then you might want to go and pick the full service management agency, right? So that's how they can apply. So you need to understand the fundamentals, right? And it's really key that you understand this way of thinking, right? Now, the major disciplines. Now, these help you develop your thinking skills to improve. And I learned this from Sam Evans, and, like, I'm so grateful that, like, it was just insane when I learned this stuff from Quantum. But, like, these help you develop your thinking skills to improve your overarching paradigm and strategy used to acquire clients. To get started, here's all the major disciplines. I've asterisked the key ones for acquisition. And again, these will be covered in the trainings that we talk about, right? Now, first we've got business as a fundamental discipline, right? Then within business, we've got accounting, sales, economics, finance, management, marketing. That's what, like, makes up business, right? Like, you can't study business. Like, you have to study these within it, right? You have to study the disciplines within business, right? Then next we've got humanities. And within that, we've got art, history, languages, literature, music, philosophy, religion, theatre. Then we've got natural and applied sciences, biology, statistics, scientific method, chemistry, computer science, engineering, geology, mathematics, physics, medicine, systems, social sciences, anthropology, economics, game theory, education, geography, law, political science, and psychology, right? And so The key is to take a unique fundamental from a discipline and apply it to your strategy and stimuli to see if it has positive effects on results. And so the equation looks like this: strategy plus stimuli equals result. So if you're using the same strategy and stimuli as everyone else, you get the same results as everyone else. The only way to get a different result is to change the strategy or stimuli in accordance with the external fundamental that you know is going to work, right? And so like psychology is probably the most important one and the most important thing you can learn, especially when it comes to client acquisition. And then like scientific method and like all these things, all the ones I've asterisked all apply to like client acquisition, right? And so like if you can learn the fundamentals, so like if you go and look at psychology and you go and start to study Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, and that's going to be super key, and you're instantly going to be able to take stuff from what you're learning about psychology with Sigmund Freud or Carl Jung and apply them in client acquisition. Just like if you start learning about chemistry and you learn about alloying, you can apply that to client acquisition, right? Or if you start learning biology and you learn about osmosis, you can apply that to the niche that you pick, right? So it's really key that you understand these fundamental disciplines, because it's just going to develop your thinking skills, and you'll just be able to improve your overarching paradigm that you actually use to acquire clients. And you're going to be able to create better stimuli and create better strategies, and more importantly, understand why they work. And like, for example, when I give you the DM alchemy system, you're going to be able to understand like why that shiny object system works and how you can change it and make it your own. So you don't just have to monkey see, monkey do and just pray for luck and hope for the best, right? So the ones asterisks are all key for acquisition in my specific paradigm. They could obviously be like, maybe like marketing and sales don't really matter, and you don't need to understand those to be good at acquisition, right? But this is just like my overarching paradigm. So my client acquisition paradigm, a paradigm is the way you see something. I touched on it at the start. It's the most important thing a person can have, but most people don't even know what the word means. And I've got an insane training on paradigms in the mindset module. It's insane, and it's probably one of the most valuable videos on the program. But just to briefly go into what a paradigm is, it's the way you see something, right? It's the most important thing a person can have, but most people don't even know what the word means. It's a viewpoint, a perspective, or a way of looking at the world. While you have a macro paradigm for how you view the entire world, you also have one for client acquisition. So if you're struggling to acquire clients, it's because your paradigm is jammed. And again, more on this in the mindset module. Client acquisition system technically does not exist as a tangible discipline or field of study. Because if I ask someone to point out what a client acquisition system means, they'll tell me it's a way of getting clients. If I ask them to point out what that means, they'll get stuck. I see client acquisition through multiple lenses. I don't see it as a standalone discipline. Instead, I see it as a combination of multiple disciplines, such as economics, reasoning, biology, genetics, evolutionary biology, virology, scientific thinking, engineering, mathematics, physics, psychology, cognition, right? And so by combining all of these disciplines together, I've formed a lattice work of mental models that makes me unstoppable in my client acquisition efforts. So now we've got thinking fundamentals. Now we're nearly at the end here, so stick with me, keep paying attention, keep taking notes. And with thinking fundamentals, right, we're going to round this module off with something called thinking fundamentals that I use for client acquisition. So we got map, territory, relation. The map is not the territory. Models of reality are not reality, and you shouldn't confuse the two. Our perception of reality often is not representative of true reality. Then we've got the circle of competence, knowing what you don't know, right? That's all this means. So we should be careful making decisions in areas we don't understand. Seek wisdom first. Just because I know a lot about client acquisition doesn't mean I know how to make a good lasagna, right? So that's really key, like really fucking key. Like you don't want to go and like learn about client acquisition from Gordon Ramsay and vice versa, right? You don't want to go and learn about client acquisition. You don't want to go and learn about making a lasagna from me, right? So first principles thinking. This is like really key. Go back to the basics. What is true and cannot be disputed or further questioned? Think back to the start of this module, right? Client acquisition at its core is a human stimulus and action. We've reasoned up from there. Then we've got thought experiments, right? Which is just using your imagination to imagine outcomes before they happen. This is key. I do this all the time. What would happen on a sales call if you handled the objection that way? How would people respond if you followed up in that new way? Second order thinking. Actions have consequences. Consequences have consequences. Don't just consider the immediate consequences of your actions or lack thereof. Consider what happens next and next and next. So this is like second and third order consequences, right? You need to understand this. And again, you can go and look into all of these different things and study them at an even deeper level. Then we've got probabilistic thinking, which is using logic and maths to estimate the likelihood of a particular outcome, right? So you don't just act based on emotion, right? It's really key because everyone I see just acts because they think something's going to work or some guru's told them to. Then we've got inversion, achieving what you want through its opposite, addition through subtraction. So moving forward by moving backwards. So you're starting at the end, right? You're inverting problems into solutions, or you're, like I said, with Mr. Beast, with the Mr. Beastification of YouTube, if everyone's doing that, you're doing the opposite, right? If that's working for everyone else and everyone is doing it, then just do the opposite, right? So then we've got Occam's razor. So simpler explanations are more likely to be true. Make complicated things simple. If all other things are equal, pick the simpler option. Then we've got Hanlon's razor, which means we should not attribute to malice, which is more easily explained by stupidity. Say someone cuts you off in traffic, they probably didn't intend to, it was a stupid mistake. If someone ignores your email, it doesn't mean they have bad intentions, right? Make sense? So, if you get ignored on DMs by a model, if she says something that you think might be rash, but it's actually just got lost in translation, like you shouldn't attribute malice to that, right? It's more easily explained by just stupidity, right? So then we've got falsifiability. So if you can't prove something wrong, you can't prove it right either. For anything to be accepted as scientifically or objectively accurate, it must be able to be proved false. Correlation versus causation. If two things happen at the same time, this does not mean one thing causes the other. And then we've got non-binary thinking, right? And I've got some other modules that talk about this, but pretty much the world is not black and white. It's grayscale. Contradiction is genius. Sometimes you have to both, right? Which is a quality principle, which, like, I'm going to explain all these in further modules. Like, I talk about this in systems thinking and a lot of the other modules, like decoding a billionaire's brain and all this sort of stuff, like, that I talk about. But this is just the thinking fundamentals that I use for client acquisition that you should start to adopt. Because if you can start to dive into these and start researching this stuff, and then you also start researching like psychology and this sort of stuff, this stuff is going to take years to get insanely good at, don't get me wrong. But if you can just start to learn them at a real fundamental like level for each discipline, like just enough to grasp the simple fundamentals that underpin it, you'll be good. Like, you'll do so much better than everyone else. You will truly be in the 1%, right? So before we end here, we've got some stimuli-based fundamentals, right, which is psychological. And these help you develop your knowledge of psychology to improve your ability to craft stimuli that are more likely to create actions and decisions in your niche, conducive to acquisition, right? And we'll be covering these later on in training, like I talked about. But stimuli-based fundamentals is psychological. Like, again, like, out of all these like things, like, I've started psychology the most. I've put the most asterisks next to it because it's arguably the most important thing, right? And so, like, yeah, go and study psychology, like, seriously. Now, final notes. Again, like I said earlier, you could strip me of all copy, scripts, SOPs, processes, proven stimuli, etc., and I'd be fine because I understand the fundamentals well enough to rebuild it all. Learning everything covered in this video can and probably will take years, and I know you want results now, and that's why we have specific stimuli, copy, scripts, etc., that you can use later on in the program, like DM Alchemy, like the marketing section and all this stuff. But just be sure to not blindly copy and paste them, right? Please use your fucking brain. I haven't just wasted my time explaining this to you to just go monkey see, monkey do, right? Because again, I'm not just saying it's not going to work to say it. Like it's real, right? And so copying is a viable strategy as it can save you time, energy, and pain. But just be careful and always add your own spin, right? So everyone wants to avoid pain and everyone wants to take the easy path, but those are going to be the people that see short-term success but eventually die, right? And so, yeah, that's really key to understand that. That is my philosophy theory of client acquisition. Hopefully this was valuable for you. I know it was a lot to explain. It was a lot to talk about. And again, like if there's anything you don't understand, I would highly advise you rewatch this 2-3 times. And again, if there's stuff that you didn't understand in depth, we're going to talk about, it's likely that we're going to talk about it in other modules that are coming up, right? So other than that, I'll see you at the top. Peace.